Hello, it's Celeste of Astrology by Celeste. Yes, it is. Oh, I forgot to. Oh, I'm back. I forgot to put my Do Not Disturb on. Yes, I did. Welcome, welcome, everyone. Hi, Lizzie. So good to see you. And Ashley Wings Astrology and Dion. So wonderful to see you all and a few others. I'm going to light my surviving Mercury retrograde candle as the first order of business. Hi, Jen. I see you there. How do I want to add you. Boop. There you are. Hi, Eva. Welcome, welcome, and Raven, and everyone else. Hi, Jen. How are
Hi
you?
there.
How are you doing on this beautiful Friday?
It's sunny here, which is great because usually
Oh,
it's cloudy. So,
oh, nice, nice.
yeah.
Yeah, well, welcome. Well, first things first, why don't you introduce yourself?
So, I'm Jenn Zahrt, and I'm an astrologer, publisher, poet, artist, translator, writer, all kinds of things. But mostly I love astrology. So, here we are.
Yes, yes. And for anyone who's new to me, I'm Celeste Brooks, and I'm an astrologer, a coach, and a teacher. Yes, I am. I'm a podcaster as well. And Jen and I got connected because we have the same podcast
Podcast
producer.
producer. And our conversation is going to happen on Monday, too. So, if you like this, we got another thing coming on Monday. We're going to bookend the weekend.
Yes, we are. So my podcast is called the Celestial Insights Podcast, and Jen's is called Within Orb, and I'm her guest on Monday. Yes, I
Yes.
am. Yeah, and Jen Braun is our amazing podcast producer. So if you have any interest in having your own podcast, you can reach out to either of us if you want to be
Yeah.
introduced to Jen.
She's amazing to work with. She keeps me in line.
She's got so much Virgo energy. I love her Virgo.
But I love the Libra bits though, because it's all like gentle reminder. I'm like, oh, that's actually genuinely a gentle reminder. You know how sometimes people go like gentle reminder and you're like, that's passive aggressive. Like it's not like that at all. It's like, oh my God, thank you so much, you know?
Oh, I love that. I never even thought about how polite she is as being like the Libra stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Did you see all that stuff
It's
going
because you
off?
clapped and you updated your operating. I haven't gotten it to work for me, but check it out. So I went to a conference it was an Astromagia. It's an astrological magic conference. And my friend Jim Barker, Divine Hand Jim, was in a talk and he started moving his hands around. And like, he was the only person on the entire Zoom call who was literally he's a palmist, right? He's
I
moving
know
his
Jim.
hands.
I
And
love Jim.
there's like, he did like the heart and all these hearts exploded everywhere. And then he did some other hand motion and like a thunderstorm came out of anywhere. And I was just like, oh my God. And like no one else can make it happen. I was like, oh, let me get onto my phone and my phone won't do it. But yours can. So I should update my phone.
I have no idea what I did. There's also this
I think
thing.
you clapped a lot. But if you do the heart thing right now, a bunch of hearts will happen. Like that? Oh, I don't know. It's like it's got signals. If you like do an okay, like something happens, you know.
Oh, hi, Rebecca. Rebecca Gordon is here.
Yes!
Did you take classes with her as well?
Oh no, we just hang out in New York when I was living in New York.
Okay, I've taken all of Rebecca's classes.
Awesome.
She's one of my teachers.
Oh,
So nice to see you.
hi,
Yeah.
everybody.
Yes. Yeah. So why don't we talk about what we're here to talk about? So we're
Okay.
here to introduce people to the Caeli Institute who are
Yes.
not familiar. So
Yes.
this is your baby. So why don't you tell us all about it?
Okay, so I've recently added librarian to my title of job descriptions because when I was in graduate school back at Berkeley, which we also have in common.
We both are Berkeley alumni. Yes,
right,
yes.
Right. And I was trying to find all of these sources about astrology, and it turns out there's lots of, hi, Jen, we just picked you up in the beginning.
You have to rewatch the beginning because we talked about you, Jen.
Yeah. So I was looking for all these astrology books, and I'd have to go to interlibrary loan, and I would have to fill out a form, and I'd need to wait. And then by the time the book got there, I'd already forgotten why I wanted to look at it, you know? And so research in astrology was really difficult. And I just noted that. I was just like, okay, filed away. At some point, I want to have, access to a bunch of really good books about the history, culture, philosophy, and practice of astrology. Fast forward, I moved to Seattle and start becoming a board member of Kepler College, working with Enid Newberg, the president at the time. And it turns out that all of their library books had been put into storage when they had to close their degree granting program, right? So they had been searching for accreditation, and the state of Washington did not give that to them because everybody has a prejudice against astrology because they don't know how to research it because we don't have a place to do that. So Kepler was trying to do that, and it turns out they had to put their things in storage and pack it in. And I'm like, our bylaws state that we have to have library services to the public. We need to get these books out. So in 2015, a different board member had some office space, and we got the Kepler College collection out again. And so I spent all of my volunteer hours. Thankfully, I had a really good job where I could spend most of the day volunteering for Kepler, and I unpacked the books and organized them all. And I was just like, this place is heaven on earth. And so it was really, really amazing. And then Saturn hit my midheaven. So I had to say goodbye to all that. Some changes happened, and I had to not work with the library anymore. And so life took me in its way, as Saturn on the midheaven will do. Fast forward through the pandemic, Kepler does not want to keep their collection open because why would you have all of these books in a place where no one can visit, And it was this point that accelerated the founding of Caeli, because they decided they were going to sell the library. And I said, well, I would like to keep the collection together. I'll make an offer. So the board took time to decide, and they accepted my offer. And that became the capstone to this. So check it out. Rewind. It's actually an astrologer named Linda Lehman's fault, because we were sitting at the NCGR conference 10 years ago in Philadelphia, and she goes, I have 2 huge boxes of German astrology books, and I heard you're working on German astrology, and I'm thinking, this is the solving to all of my interlibrary loan problems. And she said, promise me you'll find them a home. So I said, okay. They're at home with me, but she was making me promise, find them a home. So it stuck in my mind as well, like, okay, find them a home. And then I realized, I'll make them a home. And so here we have the Celestial Arts Education Library. Over the course of the years after Linda gave me those 2 boxes of books, I collected 15 boxes of books from an astrologer named Cynthia Smith, who had passed away. Her husband Norman was selling them. And so I flew out to New York, got a truck from my friend, drove to North Carolina, drove the books back to New York, and then flew home, and then got the books to be sent back to me in Seattle. And then Michael Earlywine, who got a Lifetime Achievement Award at UAC in 2018, he had bought a building to put all of these books in, and called it the Heart Center Library in Big Rapids, Michigan. And so people used to go there, they would work with Matrix software that he was also doing, and they would go to the Heart Center Library, and he's like, I've given most of the books to a university collection in Illinois. So pro tip, there is a college in Illinois that has a lot of his first edition collection. But he's like, I don't know where to put the rest. And he goes, if someone wants to come here, I'll just give it to you. So I said, I'm going to book a ticket in February of 2018. I flew out there. We spent the weekend together. He's like, you have to pack it all and drive it away. I don't want to lift a finger. And I'm like, you got it. Let's do this. And so I spent the weekend there packing 28 boxes of books, and then drove them back to Seattle. So here I am, with a collection of collections. And I'm going, okay, this is either hoarding or really cool. Let's make it open for the people to use. And so that's then throughout, during that timing when Kepler was agreeing to let me take on their library as a part of my collection, I was looking for, I was like, okay, let's manifest the dream building. I want a turnkey place with a parking lot in back that's looking basically like a wonderful home, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm not even kidding you, Mercury stationed retrograde. And my real estate agent and I found this spot, and I'm just like, okay, what's the catch? What's the catch? I'm going to put an offer in. It got rejected. I put a second offer in. That one got rejected. And I'm like, no. This building has to work out for this project. These books want to be in this space.
Well,
and so,
Mercury retrograde just delays things.
Well, it does. And so and what the catch was this. So in that, when people had the really super low mortgage rates, they were 2.5 or whatever, 3% mortgage rates, which we're never going to see again. All the real estate was just disappearing, right? And I was like, why is this place still on the market? I'll tell you why. It was because it's zoned commercial.
Ah.
It is a converted home on a street that has an accountant. It's got, all kinds of different businesses, a chiropractor, a florist, And so no one could actually get it because this is not a home to live in. This is literally the entire building is the library. and it's a commercial space. So I don't live here, right? It's the books live here. And when you come here, you don't feel like you're walking into someone's home. You feel like you're walking into a library, which I think is super cool. And I said, okay, I'm going to ride it out. I'm going to figure out a way to make it happen. And so it took all summer, and we closed right before Mercury went retrograde again. So we were in like that process for like 90 days, which is also something nobody ever does. But I'm like, oh yeah, we can set this out 90 days. It's going to happen. And I was rallying for the ancestors to help. You know, I'm just like, come on, guys, like, let's do this. And so it came together, and it was actually quite amazing. Like, I just felt like so much energy move. And so like now it took about, I would say just about now to really like unpack everything, arrange things, figure out what the space wanted to be, you know, how things wanted to be shaped, and like paint a wall and, you know, get all the nice little details set up. So that's kind of the story of how it all came together. It was just kind of like this.
I want you to tell everyone your sun, moon, and rising. Do you mind sharing?
You want me to say that?
Yes. Okay.
All right. Aquarius rising. And I am a Libra as well, just like my producer Jen, your producer Jen. But I have an Aries moon.
So that Aquarius rising, that fixed energy, you were determined and you were future focused about, you know, building this legacy for astrology and having that will, like driving across the country, doing this, doing that. That's all the Aries moon. Like,
well, if you think about it, with Aquarius rising, I've got all that Libra stuff in the whole sign ninth, right? So I'm just kind of like, here we go. I'm going to thrust myself into the waters and just collect all the books and then give them to you.
Yes, and the Libra. I love that. How you brought this to life through the lens of your chart.
Oh no, I actually had that feeling when Kepler finally said, yes, we'll sell you the collection. I had this moment where like I could feel all the blood in the veins in my body. Veins are ruled by Aquarius. And I was just like, oh my God, I'm living my chart. I was like, this is my chart. Like, making this happen is like, this is why I'm here, you know? And it just was such an amazing feeling. And I was like, okay, whoosh, here we go, you know? So, but I want others to have that feeling, you know, when you come here, I want you to feel how much joy it is to look inside a book and they reference another book, and to be able to walk across the room and find it, and look inside that book and have it reference another book, and walk to the other side of the room and find that one. And suddenly you have this stack of books that are just like, you can't get them with that proximity anywhere else, you know? Actually, there's one place on earth that you can do that. Maybe a few others. Philip Graves' house. He has twice as many books as I do, but that's the only one I know of. So.
Oh, how funny. Yeah. So tell people, where is the library?
So the library is in Olympia, Washington. And that is 60-mile drive south of Seattle in a tiny town. It's the state capital of Washington, but it's kind of, you know, there's about 40,000 people in town. And you can get places. There's parking. Parking's free on the weekends, this kind of thing. Parking's free on the street here, and we have a parking lot. But Washington State, so it's like right in between Seattle and Portland, right? But it's a very, like, energetically rich place, right? There's if you were to like tumble down the hill just outside the library and, you know, go for lunch or something, you would walk past the Olympia Brewing Company buildings that have accreted over the years. So these buildings are abandoned since 2003 because of capitalism and the ravages of that. But the reason, it's like their tagline was, it's the water. Ooh. And I had an archaeologist, I lived with an archaeologist once, and I said, okay, tell me about this land, it's, you know, this space. And it's on this cliffside overlooking where that Deschutes River tributary goes into the Sound, and it was a place where people would like survey the space and go, okay, where are we going to go hunting next? Where are we doing, you know, here? And so it's a vista in that way, and you can kind of get a sense of like, okay, we're raised up and we can see everything through the trees. But, you know, if you look in the south direction, you can see just this valley. It's beautiful, you know.
How perfect to be raised up for an Aquarius, right?
Yeah. Well, this is also 6 miles away from the Nisqually earthquake of 2001. Do you remember that?
The which earthquake?
There was an earthquake in 2001. It was a 6.8 magnitude earthquake in 6 miles away from this building itself. There's actually another building on this street that isn't repaired from that. And I'm like, come on, guys, like, get repairs. But it was almost at the epicenter of this massive earthquake when Venus was retrograde in Aries in 2001.
Ooh.
So it's, you know, seen a lot.
Wow. Uh-oh.
Yeah.
So, what? Oh, I lost my train of thought. Oh, I
Well, I'm not
wanted
worried about it because this building withstood it, you know? So I'm like, okay, you got one, you can do the next one. It's fine. You know, I'm not like trying to call that in, but yeah, it's just like an energetically like powerful place, I would say, you know, there's just
yeah,
like a lot of interesting
I love
energies.
that. And so, for people who can't get to Olympia,
Yeah.
how can they make use of the resources in the library?
So there is on the website, caeli.institute. If you go to the top bar, there's a little word that says browse. And in there, you can actually see, you don't have to be a member or anything. You can just see what's here. And we're continuously populating that because there's a lot to get in the system. And that's actually a project that's also been taking around 2 years because there's just so much. And you search for what you're looking for by title, author, some keywords, and that search will get better and better as we use the library and other people contribute their insights into each source that's looking at. And if you are a member, then you can make a request for a scan. And so, and you can also write to us and say, okay, I'm kind of looking for this or that. And you go, you know, maybe it's like Chiron or whatever. And you're like, I don't want to look at the books on Chiron. I want articles about that. And then we can, you know, take a glance and say, okay, these are the ones we have available that we know of. Is there any that are here that are interesting to you? At that point, if it's out of copyright, we can send you a digital scan of it. If it's in copyright, we have to figure out what percentage you want to see because we can't send the whole thing, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. So you can, do you have all the books scanned in?
The books are not, no, that happens upon request, right? So like if
Okay.
someone's saying, oh, okay, I need, you know, this Astrology in Your Child by Gloria Starr. It's like, okay, I think that's still a copyright. So we're going to have to say, here's the table of contents. Do you want to see this chapter or that chapter kind of thing? You know, and,
Okay. Oh,
and then
wonderful.
I was one like dream, like this is the 10-year vision, but I want to catalog all of the journal articles and then have a search engine for those. So that you can say, okay, someone wrote an article about converse progressions in 1968. I want to see that. Because right now you just know, oh, we have all of the mountain astrologers. But you don't know what's in them. There's no index, right? You can't say, oh, well, I only want the articles by Bruce Schofield in the Mountain Astrologer, right? You should be able to search that stuff. So I want to, if enough people come together and support the library, we can create this search engine so that we can use this research tool.
That is incredible. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Yes. And how do people support the library? How do people join? Or
So right now there's a membership campaign and there's a trial membership because, you know, it's a lot to commit to a thing. So I've set up for $108, there's a trial membership for a half year. So when you hit go, you get 6 months of access and digital scan requests and unlimited questions to the librarian, which is Philip or me or someone, you know, who knows what's what. If I get your question, I'll be like, okay, here's where we point you. And you also get a Saturn stress ball like this. And so the idea would be, you know, you become a member, there's a virtual campus that you can join to chat with other members, and there's classes that I'm continuously like pulling together, and you then would get, yeah, just access to the research that you need to have and other people, and then you'd know that you're supporting the existence of this place so that when you do get to come one day, like when you go to Norwalk, for example, then you can come on by and see it and use it.
yes. So Norwalk next year, it's May 23rd through 27th.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be speaking at Norwalk. So yes, come to Norwalk. It's every Memorial Day in Seattle. And it's a fun, like you learn so much, meet such great people, have a good time, and you can make a trip, plan in time to go to the library.
On your way up, yeah, especially if you're driving up from Portland, stop on in. I've already got the time sectioned off before and after of like, I'm going to be busy having visitors over here, you know? So, and if you're local to the space, if you're a member, the normal membership rate is $25 a month. So the deal, the offer that's having for trial membership is $18 a month, but it's, you get all 6 months together. But for $25 a month, you can book time in here and come. So like if you only wanted to be a member for a month and you get an Airbnb, you can come research at Caeli and then take off, right? And it's only $25 per month. So there's no commitment beyond that of like, oh my gosh, you have to pay annually. Obviously that's very supportive and we need support. But if you just wanted to come in and do a kind of a targeted research trip, like that's as low as it gets. It's pretty cool, you know? It's like, okay, for $25, I get 10,000 books. Let's do this. We actually had a visitor just this past week. So
Oh, wonderful,
yeah,
wonderful,
a
wonderful.
professor
Yeah.
from the University of Oregon came and spent 3 days here doing really cool research. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm learning some new things just by looking at what you're interested in, you know? So yeah.
I love that. And are you looking for any book donations, or do you have all the books you need?
We don't have all the books we need, but right now we're trying to get all of the books into the system so that we can evaluate what we're looking for next and sort of, you know,
Mm.
there's a wish list and we're taking notes on what's missing. And a lot of the things that are missing are more academic in nature and older and about classical astrology, because with the collection of collections, you know, the top of the pops, I can't tell you how many copies of Liz Green, Saturn, a New Look at an Old Devil I have, right? Like there's a lot of those that get like piled together. And so those are the kinds of books that we might not need as much, but there are
Mm.
some more rare items that would be really great for the concept of the research and looking into kind of, you know, the more traditional things or the more academic things. And also all of the newer things, everything the new being published, you know, that's important to have here too.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. Yeah. And so when people go to Caeli.institute, was it .org, or what is
Dot
the web?
Institute. It's dot Institute. Yeah.
Oh, just
Yeah.
Caeli.institute. They can subscribe to a mailing list to
Mhm.
keep
Yeah.
up to date with what's going on in all the classes, as well as
Yeah.
join at the reduced rate or what have you.
Yeah.
Also, make sure to plan around NORWAC if you're going to NORWAC. Will you be at NORWAC as well? Or are you
I
gonna
will have a table at Norwalk and I will
Mhm.
be talking in the library up and hoping. Oh, and we also have a new journal that we've begun. So it's called the Caeli Review. And it's kind of like I want it to be like the New Yorker of astrology, where people are sharing, you know, real time, like table talk style articles of like, think about this in society and culture, or I was looking at this factor. What do you guys think? And then have, you know, poetry, right? There's some poetry in there. And then also articles that are just kind of about complex topics, you know, relocating your solar return chart. How do you do that? What happens when you do that? You know, so different kinds of research and cultural commentary.
I love that. How
So
often does it come out?
that is quarterly, and that goes out to members. And if you wanted to get a copy of it standalone, that will be possible as well. The first issue is actually being printed right now, so it's one of those things that's coming, but it's like I can't hold it up and show you yet because it's crowning, you know, like.
I love that. Yes,
So yeah.
yes. And can
So anybody
people
listening, if you have something to contribute, you don't have to be a member to get published in it. You know, it's also just if you've got good stuff, send it to us. You know. So.
Yeah, so yeah, send your I've got to make sure. Do you know Glenn? Oh, Glenn Major, or Mavor is his last name. I've got
Okay.
to introduce you to him. He does
Okay.
amazing, beautiful poetry, and there's
Okay.
always like an astrology astrology subtext to it. So
Cool.
yeah,
Love
I think
that.
that would be great for your magazine. So I
Wonderful.
will introduce the two of you for
Thank
sure.
you. Thank you.
Yeah.
And
And
I want
just
something about lunar phase families from you in there, right?
oh yeah,
You
that's
know?
right. We
Yeah.
connected about the lunar phase families.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm
Oh
still
yeah, and
chewing
I'll
on
write
that one.
something eventually. Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, I'll
Cool.
add it to
The
my
long list of things to do, right? Exactly.
yes.
I know it
I
gets
will add
longer
it. I'm
every day.
actually having my first, I think I'm a contributor to articles in terms of being interviewed, but my first published article is going to be in the OPA magazine
Hey, that's
coming up,
awesome.
the
What's the
next
topic?
one about the Aries ingress of
Okay.
2024.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, forecasting. What a thing.
Next year is going to be something.
Yeah.
Ah, yeah,
What are
I
your
know.
thoughts about next year?
My thoughts about next year are I'm hoping that I'm really interested to see what happens with the Jupiter and Uranus conjunction at 21 Taurus on
Yeah.
April 20th. It's on my Mercury in my 11th
Yeah.
house. I think I know my story already. Well, at least part of my story I know. But I'm hoping that brings like wonderful things to a lot of different people on an individual level. I've
Mm-hmm.
had 3 clients recently who are going to be doing in vitro fertilization next year.
I was going to bring that up, right? I was going to say, so you think about the Jupiter-Uranus conjunctions in the past, you get Frankenstein's monster, you get, in 1997, Neptune was at 29 Aquarius, and when Uranus and Jupiter conjoined, we got Dolly the sheep, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking, like, are we going to find out that someone successfully cloned a human?
Oh, I didn't even think about that. It may be.
And
Oh my
Neptune's
God.
at 29 Pisces, like, that's like, the end of the zodiac, you know, like, oh my gosh. So I don't know. I mean, I'm thinking something about cloning and, or, you know, they've been experimenting with putting 3 different sets of DNA in one egg. Ooh. For those families that want a more complicated, you know, relationship. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's going to have something to do with that.
I think it's scary messing around with that, creating human beings.
Oh no, so I know. Yeah,
it's a little scary to me. Yeah, very scary, actually. Yeah, but I saw something recently about there's maybe a medication coming out for helping to eliminate morning sickness. So I think that's in line with Jupiter, Uranus.
There you go. Yeah, that's kind of cool. I had a Capricorn baby, so she didn't give me morning sickness. She turned out to be a Capricorn, and I was thinking about all the things that happened in the pregnancy, and I was like, oh yeah, I didn't happen to have that one. So yeah. But yeah, that's kind of wild.
Yeah, I think there's going to be some kind of water event
really
around that. So maybe there'll be like technology around water. Like I'm hoping desalination, that will be something, some advancements in that to do it at a less expensive.
Or, you know how they have those bacteria that can eat the plastic and that whole floating Texas-sized trash heap in the Pacific?
Oh, yeah.
It'd be really cool if they did some advancements with that. One thing about that conjunction that I think is very neat is that we have Jupiter in its own terms. And so Rick Tarnas talks about Jupiter being something that magnifies the Uranian component in that conjunction. And so I'm thinking when Jupiter's in its own terms, it's literally like Zeus unleashed, like unrestrained Jupiter energy. You know, so
yeah, and I hope it does a lot of good. Yeah. I'm a little concerned about what is going to be happening because Jupiter is legal affairs as well, and Uranus abortion. Like, what are things are going to be happening next to try to limit?
We re-legalize, you know. Lizzie was saying mushrooms that eat plastic. I think that's an awesome idea. Do they actually do that? You know, like, is that something? I haven't looked into it, but that'd be really cool if that becomes a thing, right? Because I feel like plastic is something we have to get a grip on, you know, and
it is
change our relationship to that component, you know, like everything's a chemical, but what we created with that is problematic, you know. So
yeah, so hopefully like some really great other, or maybe something around drug addiction. Maybe there'll be some kind of technology.
Saturn and Pisces coming up on Neptune.
To help people. To help people permanently end or control their desire for.
So what did you see in the ingress chart, by the way? Because I haven't looked at that.
The thing that really jumps out at me about the ingress chart, and I'm talking on Sunday for OPA.
Oh, great.
Yeah, and I'm going to be talking about this. One of the biggest things that jumps out, it's a Scorpio rising ascendant, and Mars in Aquarius at 27 degrees of Aquarius is conjunct the 4th house cusp. Okay. So the moon of the United States, in the Sibley chart, is at 27 degrees of Aquarius. So Mars on the moon. So people are going to be really fired up next year. There's going to be a lot of like people's thought processes are going to be so fixed in their corners, I feel like. Yeah. I'm hoping there's not going to be more like air problems in terms of disease. Like there's, you know, and what's interesting is the 6th house rules, the 6th house, I believe, has Aries on the chart. So
yeah.
I'm a little worried about this doggy virus. As well as the pneumonia and things that are creeping up all over the place.
Right, yeah. One thing I did notice again on Mars was that around the time of the election, a lot of the planets, the outer planets, will be in the terms of Mars. And that to me is a bit of a scary thing in terms of division and kind of, you know, turf. It's
really scary around the election because we have Mars in Cancer opposite Pluto and Capricorn, both at the 29th degree.
Yeah.
And then Mars goes into Leo. It is at 0 degrees of Leo on the election. The election's going to be
But you know what? If you say that, Mars is in Cancer, and so Pluto in Capricorn at the 29th degree is in the terms of Mars, meaning Mars actually controls how that Pluto gets expressed. And in Cancer, it's a bit inhibited. I feel like there's actually it's going to be like not as difficult as if it were in its own domicile, right?
Oh, good.
Like, I feel like that Mars is going to be like, it's going to appear threatening, but it's not going to actually bite.
Yeah, that's
you know what I mean?
Yeah. So I am thinking we're going to be so worried about political violence and all this kind of stuff. And I think stuff will still happen, but I think it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be, I
Well,
think it's
Saturn
going to be
at that point, like, because I was really looking at this, I'm kind of like, I like the bounds because it's about the physical manifestation of the thing. Like, if I can control how you express yourself, then I'm in control, right? So the bound ruler of a degree has a lot more power than we've been giving it credit. And Saturn will be in the bounds of Jupiter, ending out 2024. And I think that's important to notice, is that it's in Jupiter's house and it's on Jupiter's terms. And Jupiter's like, all right, we're about balance, fairness. We're not going to penalize, So Saturn's going to be in a place where it's a bit, and it's been in Venus. Venus is bound since it ingressed, right? So we're still in a Saturn in the terms of Venus. But I just think that that's going to be a positive, honestly. Like, so in terms of legal things,
Yeah, and I think that people are going to be very, very motivated by women's reproductive freedoms at the next election. Like right now, there's this big case, this woman, Kate Cox. Have you heard about that?
Go on. No, I haven't
She
actually.
is a woman. She's married with 2 kids, and was pregnant with her 3rd kid.
Oh, yeah,
and
the Texas case.
The Texas case,
Yeah.
yes. And she, the baby has such a disability that it's going to die for sure. Yeah. And so she got permission to get an abortion because there's also risk to her health and her life.
Future reproductive potential. I read about that.
Yeah, future reproductive, because she's had 2 C-sections already. She was interviewed on the New York Daily podcast, the New York Times Daily podcast yesterday. So it's an interesting, if you want to get the background of what's happened, you can go listen to that. But the story came to light as Mercury was stationing to go retrograde. And a lower court said she could get an abortion, but then a higher court said she couldn't. And Venus, sextile Venus in Scorpio, she's this pregnant woman, but there's a high probability the baby will die even before she gets to term, and if not, like within a week after. Right. So that's sextile, and this story is getting a lot of press. So she left the state. Yeah. So I bet she will be someone we may be seeing her or more people like her up in the collective around the election.
Yeah. And the other thing a colleague who lives in this area, Ko Hachiguchi, is an astrologer of Chinese astrology, and pointed out to me the resonance of 60 with Jupiter, Saturn. In the Chinese zodiac, you have the 5 elements and the 12 animals. And so after 60 iterations, it repeats. So I looked back at 64, 65 to see what was resonating when Jupiter was in Taurus and Saturn was in Pisces last time. And I'm thinking about this because Jupiter is going to be squaring Saturn in the fall, right? And so that is going to be the first waxing square after their conjunction at 0 Aquarius, where Pluto is going to be shining that intensity. And in 1964 and 65, you had voters' rights on the table, and you also had immigration as a massive topic. And so I know that right now there's some
history
in Washington trying to make immigration overtake the international conflicts that are happening right now. And that square makes me think they might be successful in changing the major headline story to that. Right, because of that square sort of evoking the kinds of legislation that were enacted the last time Jupiter and Saturn were squaring each other from the Gemini and Pisces, right?
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So you look back 60, 60, 60, you're going to start seeing a different kind of resonance. And that's been one of my favorite little sort of like astro research things to do. So
I love that. Yeah. Any other big things you think will be coming up?
Big. I mean, I'm always sensitive to the Venus cycle. So when Venus is superior conjunct the sun in June, I think we all have to just hold space for each other. And if we're feeling rejection or some kind of separation, just kind of, take care. right? Just because a lot of times people see Venus conjunct the sun and they're like, oh, that's great. And it's like, yeah, but when Venus is behind the sun and the planet of connection is as far away from possible as Earth, we have to hold our hearts. We have to be sensitive. You know, some really intense things could happen with that. And so if you know it's coming, you can gird yourself. It doesn't necessarily change the feelings that happen when it does occur by transit, but knowing about it in advance is, I think, a protection, which is something that kind of like allows you to sort of say like, okay, this is a cycle, I can breathe. And, you know, it's a for now, not forever, actually, you know, so sometimes those types of separations or sort of seeming betrayals can be, you know, overcome through healing later, right? So I think it's something to be aware of. And I don't mean to be doom and gloom, but I also want to be real, you know, like it's an easy thing to overlook, you know.
So you think there'll be people feeling separation based on like betrayal or just all kinds of things?
It depends on what stage of life you're in, right? So I mean, if you're a young person, it could be the death of a caretaker. If you're an older person, it could be someone going behind your back, right? And so, or loss of love, or just for others also, you know, it's an iteration of a story. I think of it like putting beads on a string. So we're going back to 2020, 2016, 2012, 2008, 2004, 2000. These are all sort of like parts of the same story. And so you'll see these things iterate. And this is for people who are sensitive to the Venus cycle. I was born close to a Venus phase change, so I'm sensitive to that, right? For those who are sensitive to Mars retrogrades or Mars cycles, they're going to get to do that at the end of the year when Mars goes retrograde in December, you know? So, but I think that for, you know, the summertime, like something that's a little more immediate, we're going to want to watch that.
And what do you tell people about how to know if they're sensitive to these cycles?
The thing is, you would look to see if you have a phase change close to your birthday, right? So that in your secondary or converse secondary progressed chart, you would be exposed to a phase change of Venus, which would put you on the map for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And within how many days would you say? A week on either side, or what would you?
It can be up to a month.
A month on either side.
Honestly, yeah. So like you'll see, and it's kind of generational. Sometimes like you'll see like my mom's also born in a Venus cycle, sensitive to that. She met my dad during one of those phases. They had me during one of those phases. They got rid of each other during one of those phases, you know. So anytime I'm like dating anyone, like, well, I'm married now, but when I met my husband and got him to meet my mom, it was during that Venus sensitive spot, right? So I was like, oh, I took this one home during the Venus retrograde. I think it's a keeper. Like, you know, so there's like these moments where, you know, like, you know, and there was a different Venus cycle where one of my college exes was like, I got married on your birthday. And I'm like, why'd you do that? You know? But I was like, predictable. And then when did they get divorced? 4 years later. So, you know, it's like one of these types of, you know, you can see the cadence there, but because Venus is usually thought of as a good thing, you see it conjoining the sun and you think, oh, June's going to be great. And I'm like, let's just see, you know, like, I don't want to cast dispersions. Obviously good things can happen, but we have to be holding, that's what I said, is like, just be gentle with yourself if it's not good, right? Just know that there's a cycle to that and it's not your fault. And sometimes it's, you know, just one of those things to be aware of, I think.
Yeah. I had one of the worst days of my life on a Venus Cazimi, where I was coming home. It was a Cazimi in my 9th house of long distance travel. I was coming home from Costa Rica and I got some kind of stomach bug there. Saturn was on my Neptune in my 5th house, and I was so sick.
Oh no!
I really did feel like I was dying. That Cazimi, that death
underworld.
And I'm a Taurus, so Venus rules my sun. So I am sensitive to Venus cycles. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Exactly. Well, yeah, I have the Libra sun, so there we go. You know.
Yeah.
But even so, yeah, I'm sorry that happened to you. I have another story about a Venus thing, but I'm not going to say it today because it's too painful. But I'm just saying, like, from experience, like, it can be really stingy. You know, she can be a bit harsh when she's very far away from us, you know.
And Lizzie is saying it was Vietnam started around that cycle, the civil rights movement. Look to the Venus star point next year. Is it 4 Gemini or what, do you know offhand?
It is, I believe, 14.
Okay, 14 Gemini. So
14,
you can look at your chart there.
But that's configured. That's configured to the Saturn Jupiter square, because it's going to be happening at 17 mutable, 14 mutable. Like on December 24th, 2024, we're going to have Saturn square Jupiter. You know, and so then we're going to get another version. The last pass is going to happen in 2025. So it's going to hit that sensitive point, you know, mutable.
Yeah. What do you think about, what are you thinking may come up in terms of the cycles of with Saturn and Jupiter in the mutable signs in terms of?
Well, the thing is, Jupiter has, even though Jupiter is in detriment in Gemini, I think that with triplicity rulership and when it's in a certain sector of Gemini, it has support, right? And so it's like, I'm thinking of, you know, well, I will tell you right now, this is what I told the Washington State Astrological Association last night. I was like, I'm still working off things I committed to when Jupiter was in Gemini last time in 2012 and 2013. You know, like there's still projects that I'm working on. I'm just going, oh my gosh. Like, so I'm a little worried about overcommitting to things. But the image that I had was Gemini rules the hands, and it's like, reach out for support, right? Reach out for help. I think Jupiter is going to be helping that Saturn, even though it's a square. I sense joy at the heart of it, honestly, right? I sense a sense of like coming together through adversity and helping each other. That's the best way we can apply it.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I have to listen to your lecture. I couldn't make it last night, but I signed up. So I will check out to hear what you said. Oh, Teresa said her life was threatened on Kazemi as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can see it by secondary progression too. That's a really important time. Any phase change in the secondary progress charts is like intense.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite things to look at with people. So.
Oh, is what the Venus star points or just any kind of phase change?
The phase changes between Venus and Mars specifically. I'm getting into Mercury. My colleague Adam Summer kind of put that feather in my cap. He's adding that to my collection. But I was started with Venus because it was personal, and then I added Mars because it was sort of like, oh, well, what about Mars too? Let's see. But just noticing when people have that, you know, secondary progressed or converse progressed phase change, like their life unfolds in a totally new way. And then these are threshold moments, once in a lifetime moments.
So when you see Mars or Venus
close
coming to your progressed sun, it's whenever the transit sun in the days before or after your birth had a phase change with one of those planets, right? So it's like if you have Mars at, let's say, 24 Sag, right? And then the sun comes by progression and passes that Mars. You've had a phase change because Mars went from being sort of, I call it like an old Mars into a new Mars. And so you have this innate ability to be sensitive to what the people around you need and you desire as a part of your achievement to give it to them, right? Like painting a mural for a community. You are the artist, but you're painting what they want to see. It's not really your like creation. But then after that passes in the secondary progress chart, that Mars is going, hey, I used to be a mural artist, but now I just want to tag my name onto buildings and do graffiti and not necessarily like beautiful paintings for the masses and public art, right? So there becomes a more risky, self-focused, my expression of me, as opposed to how can I serve the group in this kind of transcendental kind of contribution to everybody kind of thing. Oh, oh, interesting. Yeah, I have never thought about that or seen that. Yeah, and so Mars is going to go retrograde next year as well.
And that's the apex point of the cycle, right? Because began just now in November 18th, we had that conjunction at 26 Scorpio, right? Well, it was 25 and change, but it's 26 degree Scorpio. So.
Yeah, and then Mars is going to go retrograde at 6 Leo on December 6th, I think.
Yeah.
And so
12 is 6 times 6. No, 6
so that's
times 2.
So
2 6s and a 6.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting because that's like right around when they're coming together for the Electoral College certification.
Oh.
We'll see if there's any kind of repeat retrogrades bring repeats of some like wannabe January 6ers. We'll see.
Well, here's another one I've been thinking about. It wasn't for 2024, but that Saturn Neptune conjunction coming up the other night I was watching Netflix and they had this thing. This is another thing I was thinking about with the stem cells and the cloning and all of that. There's a documentary on Netflix about a Korean doctor who was pioneer in stem cell research. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, like he got reprimanded, I think in 2005, and then another sort of slap on the wrist in 2010. Why now, 13 years later, is there a full-length documentary about his work and life? I looked up the day he was born was in January of 1953. I don't know exactly the day on the top of my head, but that was when Saturn was conjunct Neptune in Libra. And next year, you know, in a couple of years, we're going to have it conjunct in the zero Aries, right? So Saturn Neptune conjunction, and that goes back also to another timing. At some point, they conjoined again. What was it? Is it a 37-year cycle?
Something like that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, something like. Oh, yeah, of course, it was in Capricorn in the early 90s when the wall fell and apartheid was ended, and so that to me is like I'm just watching that, and I'm looking at everybody who's currently 70, right? 71, turning 71 now, and just like saying, or they're turning 70. That's what it is, yeah. And just like looking and saying, like it's their time. You know, by that time that conjunction comes back again, it's a resonance with their own natal Saturn Neptune conjunction. Like, what are they going to do? What is this doctor going to do, right? Like that's, you know, he was breaking the barriers of the cells to get stem cell research in there, right? And we have other people who have been really big pioneers in their fields coming from that early 1953 conjunction, you know? And also the people who were born in the early, like 1990, 91, like it's their time, right? Making a mark. So, hey, Lizzie has that signature too. See, it's your time. No, don't say, oh no. It's like actually plan for it. Being like, all right, here's my time. I got the baton. This is my show. I think of it like a key in a lock where all the bolts kind of go away and you can unlock the door.
Yeah. Right? Oh, Lizzie's asking, can you explain converse regressed?
Oh, converse progressions.
Converse
I'll be teaching a class at Caeli about this next year, actually, because I love a good, complicated astrology class. So converse progressions is what it sounds like. It's the other direction. So if for secondary progressions, you have a day of a life equals a year of your life. For converse progressions, a day before you were born equals a year of your life. 2 days before you were born equals your second year of life. It's like you fold time in half.
Oh my God.
So 90 days, if you live to be 84 days before you were born is your 84th year of life. And you're like, kind of like going backwards into being born, right? Converse progressed. So it's the daily transits for the night or the about 3 months for average life expectancy before you were born. So,
but what does it tell you?
So for example, go back to Venus superior conjunct the sun, correct? So in timing when that, let's say it happened on April 1st, just because, right? So there's one that happened at that point. That's maybe or may not be possible, but just play with me to get the calendar in your head, okay? So, let's just use June 6th. So on June 6th, Venus is going to conjoin the sun next year in Gemini, right? Now, let's say someone is born on June 20th.
Okay.
When they're 14, in their converse progressed chart, Venus will conjoin the sun. When they're 14, they'll experience the same thing that someone else will be experiencing when their actual progressed Venus conjoins the sun in the other direction. Someone born May 25th, or I don't know if that's 14 days, but let's just say someone born on May 25th will experience by progression Venus conjunct the sun, right? Someone born after that, June 6, 2024, let's say it's June 20th, by converse progression, when they're 14, they will also have that in their secondary progressed, converse progressed chart, right? And so it's much like interpreting the progressions. It's basically giving you extra data. So for example, that's a very painful thing to have happen in your secondary progressed chart. I had a student once who had that in the configuration, and I was kind of just coming to awareness of converse progressions. And I said, so what happened? And this was around, I would say, like, I think it was 13, actually. I said, so what happened when you were 13? And he goes, oh, you mean when no one in school would talk to me because someone said something and everybody, like, abandoned me and I had to, like, spend the whole year alone? And I was like, sorry that happened. But he's like, I could never find an astrological reason that explained why that happened. There was never, like, it wasn't, you know, he was 13, so it wasn't the Saturn opposition. It was like, you know, there was just kind of this, finally it made sense. This happened at the converse progressed chart, not necessarily the progressed chart. It wasn't a transit. It wasn't a Time Lord thing. It was literally this other factor. And so that's really what got me excited about looking at it, was just like, oh my God, time works backwards. Let's see all of it. I want to know everything, you know? And at Caeli, we have a document, a pamphlet written in 1975, analyzing JFK and the year, the converse progress chart of the year he left the planet. So it's like, this is actually a thing. Like, you look at Alan Leo, he talks about converse progressions, and he's one of our like big ancestors, you know? So
interesting.
Somehow in the 20th century, we just got lost, you know?
Is this something you could do with solar fire?
Yeah, we have a setting for that. And you can even do a precessed converse progression.
Oh my God. That's getting too complicated for me. And I like to complicate things sometimes. But.
I know. And if you sit here and just like, I mean, I'm in here every day. I'm getting osmosis of like all these books are coming at me like, what about tertiary progressions, minor progressions? What about geodetic charts? I'm like, oh my God, it's so much, you know? And I just, yeah, astrology is amazing.
I love it. I love how passionate you are about astrology. Oh, okay. Jasmina's asking if you would look for eclipses. Is that important?
And the secondary progressions or converse progressions, anything that makes a big change is definitely something to watch and interpret in context. Yeah. You would look at changes of sign, changes of direction, changes of phase. Right? Eclipses are huge, especially if they contact something in a personal point too, right? Like, but obviously, if you're talking about predicting something, you have to see stacked testimony on multiple levels from multiple angles. It wouldn't just be one singular factor that would give you, you know, I mean, you could do that if your intuition is strong and you've got a lot of experience. You're like, I just know this is going to do that. But I think in order to like develop that confidence, you want to work with seeing, oh, on this level, there's this and this and this. And that kind of all tells me the same story. It's going to be really hard for that person to run away from that story. And then they go, you called it. And you're like, I just read the symbols, you know? So.
Yeah. When you're building predictions, like what do you look at first? Do you look at eclipses?
Demetra George totally screwed my head on straight years ago at one of her workshops when she was talking about Hellenistic astrology. And yes, we do absolutely live in a multidimensional world. We have symbolic ways the chart unfolds mathematically, right? The Greeks were super into that. And so you have some higher level symbolic things that are promised in your natal chart mathematically that unfold through time, but the mathematics of how that unfoldment happens is already located in the moment of the chart being cast. That's the top level. At the end, and this is why I think it's kind of fun when you're like trying to say, oh, here's my year ahead report. And it's like, but if it's not promised in the logic of your chart from the moment of your birth, mathematically, it's probably not relevant to you. So, I mean, think about all the years where it's a blur and you don't really remember what happened. But then there's that one thing where it was like, oh, the time that happened, right? It's because there was something unfolding in your chart, like now's the time. Right?
Yeah.
So that to me is the top level. You have to look at the symbolic math of how the chart's going to unfold and pick your system, right? Some people use the medieval technique of Fradaria. I don't really work with that because I haven't had the teacher to plant it in my head deep enough for me to feel confidence in it. I could go there, but I know it's existing. I know it's over there and some people are amazing with it. But, you know, for the ones that I have been taught, I like annual perfections.
I love annual perfections, yes.
And I have my 2-word, think they're good for ranking transits because that Time Lord, which is there from the moment you took your first breath, that pattern of Time Lords was set. And then it's like, oh, but what happens to also be transiting while that's going on? And then you have ranked transits. And then you get to know why your best friend got away with not feeling their Saturn return as hard as you did. They got 1 pass and you had 3. And you know what I mean? Like, we all have that friend that just kind of scoots on by. It's like, oh, Saturn wasn't your Time Lord during your Saturn return. So it was tight, but it wasn't as tight as mine, you know?
Yeah. And Jupiter's my Time Lord this year. And so I know that Jupiter-Uranus conjunction is going to bring it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's also one of mine. I actually do this. So if you go into Valens talking about multidimensional, in Betty's Valens, he says you can perfect from anything. So if you combine that with derived houses and someone's talking to you in a consultation and they're like, well, my boss or my dog, right? Anything of that. You can see what the planet is that's the perfected ruler of what's going to happen with the dog or the boss or the factor, right? Because you look at that house cusp and then you're like, oh, 8 houses away from that is this thing, and that's the planet that does that. So that planet's stationing here. I think the dog's going to have something happen when that planet goes retrograde. And then they're like, how did you know that was going to happen that day? It's like, well, because you can kind of see it all at once. So I think when you say my Time Lord, I'm like, yeah, the Time Lord from your ascendant's the most important one.
Yeah.
But there are other ones that are super important too. You can kind of add that to the mix.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's say your oldest, your sibling. So how
Oh,
would
then
you?
you got to get down to the triplicity rulers of the houses.
Okay.
Right. So it's like if they're an older, well, and then it comes to that controversy of like, are you going to go with Benatti or Omar because they switched places of that triplicity ruler of the 3rd house. So you look at the element of the 3rd house cusp and you say, okay, that element is air. So I've got Saturn, Mercury, Jupiter. Saturn is the day ruler, Mercury is the night ruler, Jupiter's participating. And I'm a day chart, so I'm going to keep it simple. It's Saturn, Mercury, Jupiter. Omar, I think, says the older sibling comes first and the younger sibling comes last, and people who are kind of your same age are in the middle. But Benatti flips it. Now, don't get me wrong, I have some sometimes I can't exactly memorize those, but I know that it can shift. But one of those planets would describe the sibling, and then you would look at that. Like you could look at, anyway, something to that effect. That's where I would go with it. That's how I.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'm sure everybody's like completely flummoxed. Like, what's she talking about now?
I'm trying to like. Yeah,
I know.
I love how your brain works.
But I do it. Yeah, I like doing it in my head, though. I think it's fun to kind of like do those gymnastics. So some of my clients know that, and they'll just like throw me total boomerangs in the middle of the consult. Like, so what about this? And I'm like, okay, I think we can figure that out. Let's figure it out, and I just kind of go at it. So.
I love that. So you look at perfections, and then do you do transits and eclipses and progressions?
I don't actually work with eclipses as much unless there's like a super tight hit for like a degree, within a degree. But I do look at the secondary progressions, and yeah, I kind of run through the gamut. The solar return is huge as well. Like obviously, you've got to look at the solar return and kind of like pull it inside out on the bi-wheel. I'll put the solar return on the outside and then put the natal on the outside of the solar return as well and see what kind of resonances happen. And I would bring eclipses in through that way because I do look at where the nodal axis is and see which houses it's falling in,
I love that.
As moments of emphasis and stuff.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, really cool. It's been amazing talking to you.
Thank you for having me.
Tell everybody again how they can find you, how they can support Caeli.
Yeah.
And your podcast.
Okay. Well, my podcast is Within Orb, and it's produced by Jen Brown. And you can hear Celeste on Within Orb actually on Monday, dropping, I think, really super early in the morning on Monday. So go to withinorb.com to see it'll redirect you to the right place for that. And definitely subscribe because Celeste, you're amazing. And I love our conversation there too. And it's only about a half an hour each time. So it's like punchy, just enough to get you to work. And you're like, oh yeah. And then I'm going to log on and buy all those books. Okay. And then you can find me at celestialspark.com or jenzahrt.com. And you can support Caeli on caeli.institute. And there's a current Saturn ball that you can get when you become a member. So please do sign up and support this. And the more members we have, the more services we can offer. And I can't wait to meet all of you who've listened today. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much, Jen. It was so wonderful to chat with you. And yeah, I can't wait to hear our episode together.
Yay. Okay.
Take good care. I'll add you as a collaborator. So if you want to put this on your wall.
Oh, awesome. Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay. You're welcome. Take good
care.
Bye, everyone. Bye.